Hello guys, let's talk about this Francis Ngannou thing. I'd like to go about a couple of things, including the titles, the Dana White Lies, what's next for Francis, and so forth. So I'd like to start with the decision made, whether I agree with it or not. And the decision was to release Francis Ngannou. And do I agree with it? Do I don't agree with it? Well, long story short, I agree with it. I think that releasing Francis Ngannou was the right thing to do. But were there other options? Given the current context and scenario, do UFC had other options? They did, but they didn't wanted those options. So for that reason, all that UFC could do was to offer more money. More money, more money, more money, and for that reason they failed to renew the contract with Francis Ngannou or write a new one. This is very important because of what? Because you will see titles like UFC released Francis Ngannou, and this is not accurate. What's accurate is UFC couldn't renew with Francis Ngannou. UFC failed to sign Francis Ngannou. This is the correct title, and that's why I wanted to start with this, because UFC released Francis Ngannou sounds like they said, Ngannou, you are not good enough, please go, you are getting old, you want lesser competition, you this, you that, you suck, we don't want anything more with you, which is false. Francis Ngannou was a key element to enter the African market, and without Francis Ngannou, well, they have less power.
I'm like so focused on Africa right now. I want to do Africa so bad.
You see Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman, and Francis Ngannou talk about the three kings of Africa, but the ultimate king of Africa is Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is the guy who has the strongest and deepest connection with Africa because he born there, he knows the problems there, he lived there for a quite long period of time, and he still goes there and eats from the same plate from those people. He is with the same people that grow with him. Every time he goes to Cameroon, he is with the people. You see him in the most humble settings. Francis Ngannou is the king of Africa and the key to take a meaningful event to Africa and make big waves, you know. Francis Ngannou is that key. Now let's go through Dana White lies, because on this conference he has said a number of lies, and any real fan of Francis Ngannou or any person that knows Francis Ngannou's stories knows that this is completely false, and I want to go through each and single one of these lies, which are just humongous to say the least. So the first lie is Dana White saying that Francis Ngannou doesn't want to take risks. Are you drunk, Dana White? Are you drunk? Anyone can see that Francis Ngannou is taking massive risks. He has been taking risks since the beginning, since young age, since he left the Cameroon. He has been taking risks for a long time. If Francis Ngannou wasn't a professional UFC fighter, he could be a capital risk manager, because dude, this guy manages risk and this guy achieves things. Obviously capital risk management is a joke, but this guy is one of the biggest risk takers of MMA, of all MMA, sports. So, which risks has he taken? Huge risk against Ciryl Gane, with one knee, fighting Ciryl Gane, one of the best fighters at the time, extremely dangerous guy, creative and with incredible movement, let me repeat that. But Francis Ngannou decides to fight him with one knee. How are you gonna fight the fastest and lightest heavyweight of all time with one knee? Is that absence of risk? On your point of view, this is absence of risk. You are crazy. You are crazy to say such thing. Even the situation that Francis Ngannou is right now is risky. He projected a contract with millions of dollars to pursue his goals, but guess what? He is not young anymore and he is injured on his knee.
He doesn't want to take a lot of risk. Feels like he's in a good position.
You want.
Dana White also said that Francis Ngannou wants to face lesser competition. That's just false for a single reason. He went after Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury is the best heavyweight champion of the past decades, and Francis Ngannou challenged him for a boxing match.
Feels like he's in a good position where he could fight lesser opponents and make more money.
According to most fans, and according to the polls that have been made, both on this channel and other channels, most people think that Tyson Fury would completely destroy Francis Ngannou. So this is not close to lesser competition, because that wouldn't happen in UFC. No single opponent in the UFC presents the same level of threat than Tyson Fury. But the majority of fans, more than 50% of fans, believe that Francis Ngannou would win over John Jones, for instance, the MMA GOAT. So again, the argument that Francis Ngannou is leaving for lesser competition is false. Francis Ngannou is leaving for having control over his career, over his contract, and provide better security for himself and his family. It's not for facing lesser competition. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense at all. Dana White also mentioned lightly, like, oh, if you don't want to be here, then go away or something. Well, this is gaslighting. Francis Ngannou wanted to be in the UFC. That's why he waited so long to sign the contract with UFC. He wanted to be part of UFC. He mentioned it many times. Another lie of Dana White. Well, this is not a lie, but it's something that can give you a false sensation of what really happened. So the other lie that Dana White mentioned was that they were negotiating for 2 years with Francis Ngannou. Whoa, 2 years of intense negotiation. That can only be the case, right? Because 2 years of negotiations, whoa, that's hard work. Wrong, right? We who know about how these negotiations happened know that these negotiations were very sparse in time, and that Francis Ngannou most of the time didn't hear a word from UFC or Dana White. Actually, some of the conversations happen casually when they were to dinner, and they casually were very close in the same restaurant. And that was when Dana White mentioned that they talked and the conversations are going very well. Well, that's how you understand that little to no effort is being made to preserve your human resources, right? Imagine being Cristiano Ronaldo, being LeBron James, being Messi, and you don't talk with them for months. And then you talk about the contract when you cross paths casually, accidentally, on the street, or when you go to a cafe, or when you go to a restaurant, and then you talk a bit. Oh yeah, this is what I'm thinking. This is not how you make business seriously. So these 2 years of negotiations probably is like 3 days, 4 days, or 3, 4, 5 days in 2 years, max. Another thing that Dana White mentioned was you cannot be holding the division for so long, blah 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 blah. That's false. That's not that he was holding the division. It's more related with the way that UFC does business and tries to pressure you and exhaust your resources to sign the contract. They just gave him incrementally better proposals without specifically addressing the issues and requirements of the team. Just as Dana White mentioned, only 2 fighters didn't sign the contract, and they were Fedor Emelianenko and Francis Ngannou, and there is a reason for that. Of course, these guys are not like the other one. It's more than money for them, and they know for what they stand for, and it's not possible to bend them with money. It's not possible. So why Dana allowed Conor McGregor to box Floyd Mayweather? For a very simple reason. He genuinely thought that Conor McGregor would beat Floyd Mayweather. This situation caused them, this simple mistake caused them his bigger star. Letting Conor McGregor fight Floyd Mayweather cost him his biggest star. Do you understand why? I will let you know why. If it wasn't for Conor McGregor fighting Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor would not be filthy rich. One. If Conor McGregor was not filthy rich, Conor McGregor would still be able to focus for getting more money. We had not lose the most entertaining fighter of all time, and the UFC would be probably in a better place. After fighting Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor's career has been a disaster. A complete disaster. This alone caused a huge trauma to Dana. And Dana is a good businessman. And one of the best rules that you can have as a businessman is to not commit the same mistake twice. Do not commit the same mistake twice. So, if you are a determined, disciplined guy, which Dana White is, you will not let anyone else do boxing. It's an opportunity to show that MMA guys are the guys, they are the ultimate fighters, was gone with Conor McGregor. In my opinion, Dana White will not let anyone else fight boxing stars. And if you really want that to happen, you have to overthrow Dana White presidency and bring the change for the UFC. But the main issue with UFC and Dana White is one. UFC is presenting the same signs that big companies are presenting. They are innovative when they start, and as they grow, they become afraid of innovation. And there are only one thing that happens when your company stops the innovation. It is overthrown. And this is the fate that is waiting at the corner of the street for UFC if they don't start innovating. Because right now, everything innovative that happens in the MMA space happens outside the UFC. It happens outside the UFC, whether it is at ONE FC, PFL, Bellator. Everything innovative that happens is outside UFC. Is outside UFC, and that's how you kill a company. That's how you kill a company. So the good side is that Dana White is old, and sooner or later he will leave the UFC and change will happen. But in the meanwhile, other promotions can catch up and eat UFC market and might even overthrow them as the leading MMA promotion. What is the problem then of Francis Ngannou leaving UFC? What's the problem? It's a very simple problem, very simple, unique problem that UFC has never faced before. The problem is that the baddest man on the planet will not be part of the UFC. Is as simple as that. So we might have this fight of Jon Jones versus Ciryl Gane, and he might say, oh, the winner is the baddest man on the planet. False, fake news, fake news, guys. The baddest man on the planet is no longer in UFC, and this is, as far as I know, the first time in the history of UFC that the champion, the strongest guy, is not in the UFC. And to be honest, guys, what I'd love to see is wherever Francis is at that time, or a few months after that, what I would like to see is the unification of the MMA heavyweight title, which obviously UFC will not do it, but if Dana for some reason insists in saying that the baddest man on the planet is at the UFC side, then we have no other solution but to cross promote and see which heavyweight is actually the baddest man on the planet. This is an outcome that I find very amusing and I would love to see. So on this complex scenario, I would like to see Francis Ngannou come in great shape. I'd like to see this fight with Jon Jones and Gane to go well, and I'd like to see Dana White calling him the baddest man on the planet, and then see some kind of cross promotion trash talk where Francis Ngannou says that the baddest man on the planet is in other place. So this is kind of the problem that I see with UFC letting their champion go and not otherwise, like UFC release him. No, he decided to leave, and this is the main problem. Which the closest thing I saw to this was seeing Demetrius Johnson leave, but Demetrius Johnson leave after losing. Even if he was considered the GOAT or the best ever, he lost the fight. So it's a different way of leaving a company, because they can always argue that Henry Cerudo was actually the best because he beat him, but he can't do that with Francis Ngannou. And this was a huge win for Francis Ngannou, which allowed him to keep his integrity, his image, and the only thing that is hurting him is actually his injury, and well, he's working to make that injury a lesser problem. And I'm very confident that if there is anyone that can overcome this, that person is Francis Ngannou. So this is the big question. What's next for Francis Ngannou? At this point in time, I think we all have the information needed to understand what is going on. And it is very simple. Francis Ngannou will join an MMA promotion that will allow him to box with whoever he wants and will fulfill his monetary needs. As simple as this. This is what's going to happen. And the most likely promotion is PFL. Why PFL? For a number of reasons. Jake Paul is there. Francis Ngannou has a great relationship with Jake Paul. Jake Paul is the best influencer in the world, and PFL still has the spark of innovation. PFL is a new company founded in 2017, and they are fighting against a monopoly. So they have all the incentives in the world to innovate. And a simple way where you can see that they innovate is on their championships format, which is yearly. So every year you have a league with a start and an end, which culminates with a champion. This is huge. This is huge in terms of fairness. You know, if you want to get the title, you have to be in shape, you have to beat all the other opponents, and to be the best, you have no chance but to beat the best. This is something that we don't find in the UFC, and this resolves many problems that UFC faces right now, like people holding the division and stuff like that for reasons that sometimes are obscure. And this championship format is superior from a competitive level, and it is still to prove if it can be more profitable than this hype-based model that UFC follows. What I see, and in my opinion, the format that UFC follows is extremely old, right? Is similar to what we see mostly in boxing. You arrange fights based on multiple factors, and it's not very clear why someone fights another person. And in sports like soccer, NBA, etc., that's crystal clear.